Hey guys, your captain is back.
Hey,
You know, I do love myself some good old hot takes from time to time. And as someone who loves modern SpongeBob too, I think you can tell that I actually have a lot of hot takes about SpongeBob just with this information. So I thought I'd share some of them by talking about 5 episodes that I dislike or consider overrated while most people like or love them, and 5 episodes that I consider underrated or that I like even though most people hate them. Let's go!
gotta pick some more potato crisps for this one.
Our 5th most overrated episode in the show is jellyfishing. So this episode, like most of the ones from the classic era, is often seen as a great one. It's not as revered as Ripped Pants, Pizza Delivery, or SB129, but it's still a really popular episode. And personally, I just don't get it. When you watch it without the old good new bad bias, it has most of the flaws many episodes from season 6 to 8 are hated for. I honestly think that for this episode, the nostalgia, coupled with the aforementioned bias, blinds a lot of people when it comes to it, because it's literally classic SpongeBob's take on ink lemonade, even though it's not as gross and pleasant to watch. In this episode, SpongeBob and Patrick are preparing for a jellyfishing session. Squidward sees them, so they ask him if he wants to go with them. Instead of just refusing, he decides to answer with a sarcastic answer.
Really? Jellyfishing with you guys? Oh, that would be the best day ever in my book. I would love to go jellyfishing. I can't think of anything I'd love to do more on my day off than go jellyfishing.
OMG, that's literally me!
But Patrick and SpongeBob thinks he really wants to. He decides to spend his day off with a tour on his bike. But during the tour, a jellyfish comes towards him. It ends up attacking him and he falls off a cliff, which results in him being covered in bandages and forced to move in a wheelchair too. And from here, the torture begins for poor Squidward. He comes home hoping that he'll be able to relax here, but SpongeBob and Patrick greet him with a party. He desperately tries to escape them, but to no avail. They force him back inside his house to participate in their activities. When Patrick prepares hot soup, he tries to blow on it, but of course he ends up spilling it on Squidward's face. Then of course SpongeBob tries to play clarinet, and we get a long scene with him wetting his lips, and just like the scene where the jellyfish comes towards Squidward, it goes on for way too long, and it's just too easy to see that it was just added for the runtime, but it doesn't work at all. We're already supposed to be at the 7-minute mark, and they barely started their jellyfishing session, which is supposed to be the main focus of the episode if you look at the title. Squidward gets harassed even more, with Patrick wedging a stick into his hand in a very painful looking way, a blue Danube cover that isn't bad per se, but that again is clearly figured in an episode that already spends 7 minutes just sandbagging in a scene that could have led to the 3 characters going jellyfishing at the 2nd-minute mark. Even when Squidward tries to get revenge on SpongeBob and Patrick by trying to attract the jellyfish toward them, he ends up getting attacked by a giant jellyfish. And I gotta remind you, he's already fucking disabled and stuck in a wheelchair. In the end, Squidward is now stuck on a hospital bed with wheels, covered in plaster. SpongeBob and Patrick apologize, but Squidward is understandably still upset about this. And the 2 characters still think Squidward won't be mad about making it worse by harassing him with a dangerous activity when he was already disabled. Your friend is stuck in an electric wheelchair. Why are you trying to force him to participate in an activity that could have him get electrocuted due to barnacle faces? And in the end, Squidward can't even enjoy his revenge, because the giant jellyfish from earlier comes again and electrocutes him one more time, because why the hell not at this point? And that's how the episode ends! You can't hide it with any nostalgia bias from me. Jellyfishing is pure, unadulterated Squidward torture. He just gave a sarcastic answer to SpongeBob and Patrick, and just for this, he gets constantly abused by everything around him, even after being forced to stay in a wheelchair. That's not how you actually punish Squidward. Usually, when he gets punished, he did something to deserve it, like in Home Sweet Pineapple, where he dances near the remains of SpongeBob's house while seeing his neighbor being forced to leave the city, only for a new house to appear and crush Squidward while he's dancing. Here, Squidward barely said something a bit sarcastic. It's just not a fair way to make him get a payback. SpongeBob and Patrick are also so stupid and annoying in this episode. They can clearly see that Squidward is disabled. He's in a wheelchair and bandaged at that. How can they actually think that Squidward would enjoy a jellyfishing session in those circumstances? They're literally harassing their own disabled neighbor in this episode. How is this episode not labeled as Squidward torture when he goes through all of that? And to top it off, the episode drags on way too much, and a lot of scenes are way too long. You can truly tell that they were just added for the runtime. So yeah, jellyfishing is very overrated. But you know, even though it's a popular episode, I still see a pocket full of people who agree with me about this one, so I decided to keep it long. Our fifth most overhated episode is Krabby End. From what I've seen, this is one of the rare and famous episodes in the pre-movie era. Nobody puts it in their bottom 10 episodes of the whole show, but I see a lot of people calling this the worst episode of season 3, or even the worst episode of the entire pre-movie era. Even die-hard pre-movie defenders seem to dislike this one, and I just don't get why, of all the season 3 episodes, this is the one that people hate. In this episode, SpongeBob and the crew notice that today is the first day of summer. SpongeBob is being his usual cheerful self about this season, while Squidward is bored. When Mr. Krabs hears them talk about summer, he gets unusually excited. He explains to SpongeBob that the reason he's excited is that the children of Bikini Bottom are going to have their usual summer break, and since they won't have to go to school, they're going to have more leisure time, and their parents typically give them more allowance. Even though Mr. Krabs says that what makes him happy is providing them a nutritious meal, you can clearly see that what actually makes him happy is to make more money thanks to the children's allowance. But then, an entire day passes and nobody comes to the Krusty Krab. Krabs and SpongeBob quickly understand that it's because the children are instead playing on a new playground that was built near the restaurant. He expresses his frustration about this.
They're here, all right. Just look at them, SpongeBob. So weak and malnourished, with nobody trying to sell them nothing.
I mean, I don't know. Compared to Squidward, who's depressed all the time, Patrick, who's overeating all the time, or Mrs. Puff, who's presented by some jokes in the show as being mentally insane, these children look pretty healthy to me, whether it's mentally or physically.
You're trying to be psychology experts now?
I don't tell you how to live your life.
But then, Mr. Krabs has an idea. The next day, we see what this idea was. Mr. Krabs decides to open an amusement park that he calls Krabby End. Everyone's excited to see it, but quickly, you can see that the place looks really disappointing.
All right, here we go. I give you Krabby Land!
Based on that phony Willy Wonka experience from 2023, I guess SpongeBob is the new Simpsons.
Then, Mr. Krabs promises that a clown named Krabby will come after he counts his money, so SpongeBob must stall by entertaining the children. He desperately tries to impress them by making bubbles, but nothing seems to satisfy them, until SpongeBob mistakenly makes his bubble pop in his eyes, making them hurt badly. Therefore, he trips on several rides from Krabby End, making the kids laugh. He understands that they seem to find other people being in pain funny. For a while, he purposely hurts himself to make the children laugh. That's the only scene in the episode that I don't really like. I think it's kind of unpleasant to see, but I don't think it ruins the episode for me. After all, it's short-lived, and there are still some visual gags that made me laugh. But soon, SpongeBob can't take it anymore, so he goes to Mr. Krabs' office to see him. And then we get to the part of the episode that everyone hates. Mr. Krabs finally announces to the children that Krabby the Clown is coming. SpongeBob and the kids are excited, but then Krabby the Clown just reveals cheap costume made by Mr. Krabs, who literally just used the tomato that he seemingly painted to make the nose. SpongeBob feels understandably betrayed.
How could you, Mr. Krabs? You promised these children Krabby the Clown, but all I saw out there was Chippy the Cheapskate.
Sadly, Mr. Krabs reveals a sad truth.
I don't care about the children. I just care about their parents' money.
But then he meets up with the kids, who heard everything he said. They finally understand that Krabs was trying to scam him, and they attack him. SpongeBob then comes outside after a kid told him to and sees dollar bills falling, without saying that it's actually one of the kids who's throwing them. SpongeBob's enjoying the sight, but then he wonders where Mr. Krabs is. We then cut to a shot of Mr. Krabs being fed lima beans as a comeuppance, which was something SpongeBob also go through during the scene where he was trying to stall ending the episode. So the reason why people hate this one is that Mr. Krabs is being unreasonably greedy and scams everyone with a cheap playground and a cheap clown costume, and that the children are being jerks to SpongeBob during the stalling scene. But on the other hand, the children get their comeuppance when Mr. Krabs reveals that he just wanted to scam them, and Mr. Krabs got his just desserts when he goes through the torture that SpongeBob endured earlier. Not only that, but he also did way worse than that, both before and after this episode. 2 episodes earlier, he tried to sell SpongeBob's soul for a couple of bucks. And I think that Krabby End also has a good message about the fact that many people can do the worst actions possible for money, and that you should be really careful as those scammers can be anywhere while disguising their greed in clever ways. Plus, there are some funny jokes as well, like the first playground scene, Mr. Krabs opening Krabby End, and the part where SpongeBob reveals that the kids are using his arms and legs as boomerangs. So I think that while this episode is far from being one of the best in Season 3, it's also really overhated, and it deserves more credit for its good message that it has right now, especially since it's only became a more relevant day. Our 4th most overrated episode is Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 4 in Season 3, just like the previous one. So I think that for starters, it's worth mentioning that I don't dislike this episode per se. I think that unlike Jellyfishing, this one's watchable, but even then, most people consider Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 4 to be classic, while for me, it's painfully mid, and it's easily the worst Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy episode, at least in the pre-movie era. It results too much to the admittedly common, but really lazy writing method of changing the characters' personalities to fit the story, rather than changing the story to fit the characters' personalities. In this episode, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, the superheroes of Bikini Bottom, are eating at the Krusty Krab. But then, SpongeBob overhears them, and he tries his absolute best to have their autographs, since he's a huge fan of the two heroes. Except they already met him in the past, and they don't like him because of his annoying nature. In fact, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy are so sick of seeing him again that they immediately run away from the Krusty Krab upon seeing him. But Mermaid Man forgets his magic belt, which lands in SpongeBob's hands. This is when the episode goes downhill. SpongeBob, who should probably know how big the responsibility of having this belt is, just decides to play with it like a toy and shrinks literally everything in the kitchen. This fits with SpongeBob's playful personality and how he can have fun with anything he finds, but I feel like something like Mermaid Man's belt should be the one exception, just because of how powerful it is and how knowledgeable SpongeBob is about Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy.
Especially since he really harassed them into getting out of retirement in their very first pilot episode.
But anyway, Squidward enters the kitchen and then understands what's going on when he sees SpongeBob wearing Mermaid Man's belt. He also manages to understand that SpongeBob kind of stole it. He begins to freak out when Squidward tries to call Mermaid Man, so he ends up shrinking him with the belt. Squidward gets mad, so SpongeBob tries to change him back, but to no avail. So he tries to tell Patrick about it and to ask for advice about how to use this magic belt. SpongeBob tries to follow Patrick's advice, but in the process of trying to unshrink Squidward, he instead shrinks Patrick. When Squidward threatens to tell Mermaid's Man about it, he puts Squidward and Patrick in a jar so they can't tell the superheroes. And then other people greet him, and he shrinks them too to put them into the jar so they can't tell Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy about it either, before they can even understand what's going on, and in the end, SpongeBob shrinks the population of the whole city.
Also, why did SpongeBob shrink Sandy? She could have easily made an invention to solve this issue.
Then, the townsfolk snap and start to attack SpongeBob from the inside. They break his bones, kick his organs, and literally attempt to tear him apart. Yep, you heard me right. They literally try to murder SpongeBob in a way that looks really painful.
Now I have to drive 5 miles to go to the bathroom in my own home!
And I need an elevator to climb 1 stair. Hey!
We've been shrinking for years!
But this is ridiculous.
This is just cruel, even for the Bikini Bottomite standards, because this is literally murder we're talking about here, and nobody considers that they're going too far, especially since SpongeBob's parents seemingly joined the mob too, which is completely out of character for them. Fortunately, he manages to find a way to solve the problems caused by the magic belt by making the city smaller so its height adapts to the townsfolk's new height, before shrinking himself too. Everyone then praises SpongeBob for this idea, before a shot of Plankton coming back from his vacation and seeing the city that SpongeBob just shrinked, ending the episode. This episode is just mediocre. SpongeBob is way too dumb here. He doesn't consider asking Sandy for help, even though she could have fixed the magic belt issue in no time with her inventions, and he immediately shrinks everyone in town when they see him just because of the belt, even though the people who are grading him didn't seem to give a damn about that belt. I get that it's supposed to be the joke, but once again, changing the characters' personalities to make a joke isn't a good writing method. And the townsfolk are oddly violent and cruel here, even for their standards. They try to murder SpongeBob by breaking him apart from the inside, which is not only painful looking, but really harsh when you consider that Sandy, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, Patrick, and even SpongeBob's parents were part of this mob. And in fact, this episode is so poorly written that when I first heard about its plot, I thought it was from season 6 to 8. Moving on. Our 4th most overhated episode is Buff for Puff. I like this episode, and I think it has a good message, but it's hated on the internet for a reason that I kind of understand. However, I don't get why it straight up ruins the episode in everyone's mind. This season 14 episode starts with Mr. Krabs and Mrs. Puff relaxing on the beach and enjoying some fondue. And this is it, that's the part that ruins the episode in everyone's books. I mean, yeah, I kinda get why. There are a lot of fat jokes. They're kinda still, but people act like this scene single-handedly ruins the episode, and I just don't get it. This scene is only the build-up for the actual plot of the episode, and it's short-lived. It doesn't exceed 1 to 2 minutes, so unlike jellyfishing, you don't have to wait until the second half of the episode to finally get to the main selling point of it. Because after eating their fondue, Mr. Krabs and Mrs. Puff decide to go swimming.
Actually, swimming after eating isn't inherently so dangerous that you drown if you go into the water after your meal. If you had a copious meal, this can make it physically unpleasant if you swim just after you finish eating, but it won't just make you drown like that. The idea that swimming after eating can make you drown is an urban legend.
Yeah, thank you, Rookie. Gary the Lobster saves Krabs, and Mrs. Puff kisses his chick to thank him. Mr. Krabs assumes that Mrs. Puff fell in love with Gary and immediately starts to panic. At the Krusty Krab, he shows SpongeBob how insecure he is about his masculinity after this beach date.
I'm sure Mrs. Puff loves you for who you are, not how many muscles you have.
Look! Boy! His father's dead! His mommy's shot! So undefined!
After a total breakdown, he has an idea. He goes to Gary's gym to grow muscles before his next beach date. However, since he thinks Gary has become a rival in love for him, he decides to put on a disguise to pretend to be somebody else. However, he ends up accepting Gary's help, and this workout scene gives us some nice jokes.
I'm doing it!
Gary doesn't know how to motivate Krabs to work out, and SpongeBob then gives us a good way to push yourself to do something that you won't want to do, aka what Gary would probably call delayed gratification. He puts money on all the working out equipment, and yeah, trying to reward yourself after an intense workout session makes it all the more satisfying, and it actually motivates you in the end because you'll be happy to have finished what you didn't want to do at first. But 1 week later, Mr. Krabs already expects to be buff. His physique understandably remained unchanged. And here's another good message about toxic masculinity, or as it's most commonly known on the internet, red pill. Some red pill influencers will do anything to convince you that you can be rich and churn and escape the rat race with only 1 week of following their advice. Well, first, their advice sucks, and then, when you have a big goal in your life, with his shell, Krabs decides to stay to look buff. During his next date, he tries to look as good a child towards Mrs. Puff, but quickly she gets annoyed with him when he ends up just being there to be admired by other people. And yeah, the red pill influencers I mentioned there before can easily convince you that being someone edgy, who doesn't care about love, and who ignores his wife for the admiration of other people is a good child. But truthfully, this is just the best way to come across as a self-centered, narcissistic jerk, and most women you want to date will just ditch you quickly. And Krabs gets his comeuppance when Gary chases him. However, Gary gets in trouble, so Mr. Krabs immediately goes into the water to save him. And admittedly, the ending for this episode is pretty meh. Even though he saved the life, Mrs. Puff just ditches Krabs. But on the other hand, he finally gets to learn his lesson about toxic masculinity when Mrs. Puff ends up actually getting interested in Gary, while Krabs tries to get back with her, ending the episode. Puff for Puff is an episode full of good messages about why toxic masculinity is unhealthy in your life in general. Even though the first scene of the episode is a bit gross, it's still short enough and the rest of it has some good jokes, relatable moments, and a good moral. I honestly think that this episode deserves a lot more credit than it gets. Our third most overrated episode is Naughty Nautical Neighbors. Just like Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 4, I wouldn't say that this one is outright bad, but where most people love it and consider it to be classic, I find it really mid, and I don't really understand how it gets so much praise. In this episode, SpongeBob and Patrick are sending messages to each other through bubbles, but they make a lot of noise doing this, which annoys Squidward, who is about to eat a cake that he just baked. He finds a solution to prevent SpongeBob and Patrick from annoying him again. He imitates them and sends mean messages to them through bubbles so he can make them think that they're not friends anymore. It works, and then they both save Squidward from a health problem, which makes them want to become his best friend. So yeah, this episode is just one of these
"we're not friends anymore"
trope, which is already a bad sign. In most cartoon episodes that use it, the story is so cliché and the character interactions are just so unpleasant, making the whole episode feel awkward and immature. And sadly, despite the SpongeBob charm, Naughty Nautical Neighbors isn't an exception. It's just unpleasant and almost cringe to see SpongeBob and Patrick bickering like this. And the jokes aren't really funny, they're mostly either stale or unpleasant. Okay, I'll give them a bit of credit. I kinda like this part.
So this is what I find, huh? My best friend and my ex-best friend and rubber bath toys!
But apart from that, there aren't any jokes that really made me laugh. And because of this, the episode gets repetitive very quickly. The shtick is always the same. SpongeBob and Patrick both want to become Squidward's best friend, and then they bicker. It's just really boring when there aren't any jokes that make the episode enjoyable. So there isn't anything that I truly remember and that makes me want to rewatch this episode when I think about it. Yes, the ending where SpongeBob and Patrick finally make up is wholesome, but that's the problem. It's the ending. It barely makes up for 1 minute of the episode, so by the time we get there, I'm already bored and kind of in a bad mood because of how unpleasant SpongeBob and Patrick's interactions were until this point. So yeah, this is the definition of a mid-episode. There's nothing particularly bad that makes the episode awful, but there is nothing that I particularly like or makes the episode memorable either, and it's clearly not an episode that I'd watch more than once. Our third most overhated episode is Cuddly Hogs from season 11. This episode is surprisingly hated by many people due to its dark and weird nature that made many watchers feel uncomfortable. But personally, I think this eerie atmosphere is actually one of its strengths. Not only that, but it also has a couple of really clever allegories that you might not understand at first. In this episode, SpongeBob and Squidward are cleaning out the mess that the customers made in the Krusty Krab. Suddenly, they find a rotten Krabby Patty. Squidward is about to throw it away, but SpongeBob is adamant about not wasting it. So to prove his point, SpongeBob eats the rotten Krabby Patty in front of Squidward. He pretends to like it, but after this, he has to go outside as he feels sick. Suddenly, he sees a giant hamster that wants to be his friend. He's called Cuddly Hogs. Already, I love the atmosphere of the scenes with his character. They would feel wholesome in other circumstances, with SpongeBob constantly hugging him and having fun with him, but at the same time, with the psychedelic music that plays in most scenes where he appears, they also feel eerie, because you can feel that something's not right. And then, the episode gets mysterious. After a day of fun, SpongeBob sleeps on Cuddly Hog's torso, but then, the next day, he wakes up on his bed's mattress, and Cuddly Hog is gone. SpongeBob is upset about it. He takes another bite of the rotten Krabby Patty, and suddenly, Cuddly Hog comes back. And I think that some of you may have understood the first metaphor of this episode. It's a very good allegory about drugs. The fact that SpongeBob has to eat something as toxic as a rotten burger for his friend to appear, the fact that he seems to have the time of his life when he's with Cuddly Hogs, the fact that he looks and sounds unusually upset and worried when his new friend isn't around. Yeah, you can make the parallel with drugs, as you feel super happy and chill when being high, but then, when you take them too often, you end up being depressed when you can't take a shot. The episode then continues to build up with the mystery when SpongeBob goes out for a walk with Cuddly Hogs. He then tries to introduce him with his other friends, but nobody sees Cuddly Hogs. SpongeBob doesn't understand it at all, which already kind of implies that he's hallucinating his new friend, as if he took mushrooms, just like when—
No. That's a road we don't want to go down again.
So Cuddly Hogs explains that the only way to see him and interact with him is to eat the rotten Krabby Patty from earlier, that he calls a magic sandwich. At the Krusty Krab, SpongeBob cuts it in pieces so everyone can eat them and see Cuddly Hogs. They eat it, and they get to meet Cuddly Hogs and to hug him. Everyone's enjoying this, but quickly, the dream turns into a nightmare. Cuddly Hogs suddenly starts eating all the Bikini Bottomites, which can be seen as a metaphor about bad trips. This is proven by this part.
Sorry I'm late, back to bed.
Everyone sees and lives through the entire ordeal, but Squidward actually sees what's happening, which proves that they all hallucinated Cuddly Hogs. They see him, Squidward doesn't. They all pass out, and the next day, everyone wakes up, and they blame SpongeBob for this. SpongeBob is upset about how Cuddly Hogs acted yesterday. He meets with his new friend by taking the last bite of the rotten Krabby Patty, and Cuddly Hogs revealed that the E in his name stands for eat, because he's always hungry. SpongeBob feeds him with another piece of the rotten Krabby Patty, which makes Cuddly Hogs hallucinate that he's a hamster in a cage in a live-action bedroom with a lot of SpongeBob merch, ending the episode. This episode is really good. It has an amazing atmosphere that could have been seen as wholesome, but that turns eerie with its psychedelic tone. The metaphor about drugs is really clever, and Cuddly Hugs, the new one-off character, is really charming, being cute and scary at the same time. I honestly don't understand why this episode is hated. I get that its eerie nature probably made a lot of viewers uncomfortable, but honestly, I'm okay with some episodes having a more uncomfortable and scary atmosphere than usually, because first, I love horror, and then it allows these episodes to stand out with a different atmosphere compared to other episodes with a tone that's more lighthearted and goofy. If you enjoy it when cartoons make episodes with a psychedelic atmosphere, then I highly recommend you watch Cuddly Hugs. Our second most overrated episode is Aquarium Returns. Here, we have an interesting case. This is an episode that almost manages to be great, but the ending alone drags it down and ruins any repeat reviews. In this episode, Squidward is just chilling out during his lunch break, but suddenly, his rich and arrogant rival, Squilliam Fancyson, comes and starts taunting him.
Hey, what you been up to? Oh, just succeeding in everything you failed in.
He forces him to tell the job he has. Squilliam is sure that Squidward's a cashier, but since he doesn't want to be humiliated, Squidward decides to lie and tell that he owns a 5-star restaurant. But then, Squilliam and all of his fans decide to come to this restaurant tonight, so Squidward and the crew have to turn the Krusty Krab into a fancy restaurant in only 20 minutes. He assigns a role to each member of the Krusty crew and Patrick. Sadly, Mr. Krabs, who is supposed to be the chef, cooks terribly, and Patrick can't even understand his role, so Squidward has to rely on SpongeBob entirely to turn the Krusty Krab into a 5-star restaurant. He tells SpongeBob to empty his head of anything that isn't related to fine dining or breathing. SpongeBob does this, literally.
Hurry up! What do you think I'm paying you for? You don't pay me. We don't even exist. We're just a clever visual metaphor used to personify the abstract concept of thought. One more crack like that and you're out of here. No, please! I have 3 kids.
Bro thinks he's in Inside Out.
Didn't this episode release before Inside Out? Oh, never mind. Squilliam comes, and suddenly the Krusty Krab is turned into a fancy restaurant. He's served a fancy meal and pampered by SpongeBob. He really enjoys this time here, so Squidward forces Squilliam to admit that he was wrong about him, and for a while, everything seems to be going well. But then, when he asks SpongeBob for his name, it turns out that he forgot it because he emptied his brain of anything that wasn't related to fine dining and breathing, including his own name. In the process of trying to remember it, he ends up going crazy and destroys the entire restaurant. In the end, Squidward's exposed and he's forced to admit that he lied, that the Krusty Krab is just fast food and that he's just a cashier. Squilliam literally trolls Squidward to humiliate him further.
The horrible, sad truth is, I'm a cashier too.
Is that true?
Of course not. I'm filthy stinking rich.
He comes out of the restaurant and brings his fans to a ride in his balloon/casino.
Man, they must really love losing money.
Squidward sits down in disappointment, ending the episode. So what's the problem here? At first glance, all the ingredients for an amazing episode seem to be here. The premise is good, the jokes are funny, and the visuals are really beautiful. But you must have understood that if this episode is in the overrated category, then there is a catch. And as I said, it's the ending. It's really frustrating to watch. Yes, Squidward lied to impress Squilliam, but 1. He lied in Band Geeks 2 and he wins here, and 2. Nevertheless, he deserved to be respected once in his life, and everything he wanted was to be seen as someone who's at least a bit respectable by Squilliam. Yet in the end, he loses, and he's humiliated once more even though it wasn't even his fault. So this ending really gives you a bitter taste in your mouth, because it gives you that impression that it was all for nothing. And it's not like Squidward was being unlikable. If anything, Squilliam was the unlikable one here. So I don't see why Squidward losing like this to an arrogant jerk like Squilliam would make for a satisfying ending. And since this ending is so frustrating, it ruins repeat viewings. Since you know that in the end it's gonna be all for nothing, it just makes me way less invested in the episode. I'll give it some credit. It's saved from being really terrible by good jokes, like these ones.
Don't be intimidated, Squidward. Try to imagine him in his underwear. Oh no, he's hot!
Oh, boo-hoo! Let me play a sad song for you on the world's smallest violin.
This is serious.
I know. This really is the world's smallest violin. See?
But despite this, the fact that all of this will end in a "it was all for nothing" type of ending just leaves a bad taste in my mouth every time I think of this episode. Because it's not just a sour note, it's the last note of the song, so it will most likely be the thing you'll remember the most vividly a few minutes after watching this episode for the first time. And this ending is so frustrating that it breaks my investment in the story. I don't know why so many people defend the ending whenever I criticize the episode for it. The good jokes aside, I think that Squilliam Returns is very overrated. Plus, if I want a good Squilliam episode, I'll just watch Band Geeks, or our second overhated episode of the show, which is House Fancy. Yep, after talking about Squilliam's overrated episode, we talk about his overhated episode.
It's kind of a cringe way of making a transition.
So House Fancy is kind of on the opposite side of the spectrum compared to the previous episode. While Squilliam Returns was loved by many people but ruined by its ending in my opinion, House Fancy is good in my opinion but hated by many people on the internet because of a very short scene. Since it only lasts a few seconds, I'm gonna tell what it is right away. In a part of the episode where SpongeBob and Squidward try to move a sofa, SpongeBob mistakenly crushes Squidward's toenail with said sofa, which causes Squidward to lose his toenail in a painful looking way. This scene lasts 13 seconds, so while it's pretty gross, I think it doesn't affect the quality of the episode, but a lot of people seem to hate it for that reason alone. It doesn't help that House Fancy is in season 6, a season that's infamous for its gross out humor. But as I said, this scene only lasts 13 seconds, whereas episodes like Fungus Among Us or The Sprinter have premises that are solely based on gross out. So I think we should give this episode another chance in spite of the toenail scene. Now, let's talk about its actual plot. Squidward is watching House Fancy, a show where the host presents Pretty House to the audience, but then he receives a call from Squilliam, and he realizes that his rival's house is the star of today's episode.
Hello, peasants.
For the first part of the episode, we see the host admiring Squilliam's house with a lot of wacky and fancy elements, like a gilded doorknob, a golden toilet, soda waterfalls, or a bath elevator. But suddenly, Squidward calls the host of the show. He claims that his house is way fancier than Squilliam's house, but then the host immediately decides to come to Squidward's house in 2 hours to see it, which gives us a premise that is similar to Squilliam Returns. And Squidward sees that his house is so full of dirty spots, faded spots on the wall, and holes that he starts panicking. Then he sees that SpongeBob was spying on him the whole time. He reluctantly accepts his neighbor's help, and in the second part of the episode, they have to make Squidward's house more fancy. This episode has a lot of good qualities. First, the visuals. The atmosphere in Squilliam's house is very pleasant. It looks elegant, yet it also feels cartoony from all the over-the-top fancy things you can find, like a jewel-encrusted toilet paper holder, a sculpture of Squilliam's unibrow made of doorknobs, and even the sound design in this part is great, and the music regularly changes to adapt the room we're in, from the majestic music in the golden toilet room to the fact that you can hear birds chirping in the rooftop garden. Then, the second part is also really fun too. There are a lot of creative ideas and fun jokes, like SpongeBob using his absorbent abilities to paint Squidward's living room, the vacuum literally sucking up everything in the house until it explodes, or even, the best part, Squidward's toilet. You know what? This one will be better if I just show it to you.
Who's Nick? Sorry, Squidward, I couldn't wait any longer. I gotta use your toilet. No questions. Thanks. I wouldn't go in there for a couple days. For weeks. Please, please, somebody put me out of my misery. Have mercy on my soul.
So that's why they don't want you to use the restroom in school.
Then, Squidward's vacuum gets so full that it ends up exploding and destroying his house. We then cut to the house fancy show, with the host arriving at Squidward's house with Squilliam. We then see their point of view, seeing Squidward's destroyed house, with Squidward being resigned. He expects bad feedback, but instead, the host compliments his house and considers Squidward's house to be a masterpiece. He likes it so much that he decides to feature it in an hour-long House Fancy special and to crown Squidward House Fancy Prince of the Year. Squidward celebrates his victory, ending the episode. So yeah, this episode's great. It's full of amazing jokes, great visuals, and creative ideas. In short, it has all the ingredients for a good SpongeBob episode, and it uses them in a great way. It's also refreshing to see Squidward finally win at the end of an episode in the pre-sequel era, aka seasons 6 to 8. I really don't get how 13 seconds single-handedly ruins the episode in a lot of people's minds, and I think it deserves way more credit than it gets. The most overrated episode in SpongeBob SquarePants is Nature Pens. Guys, we need to talk. SpongeBob is a show that always took pride in being wholesome and family-friendly enough for the children to enjoy it, yet also having mature themes, relatable situations, and simply quality humor that allows for the older audience to get into the show as well. So can someone tell me why Nature Pens, an episode from the first season, which is one of the best seasons in the whole fucking show, feels so awkward, uncomfortable, cruel, and out of character in a season that has episodes like Walking Small, Help Wanted, Texas, Neptune's Patch, fucking Pickles, Scary Pants, and SB129 for Neptune's sake? How could the writers just pitch a couple of themes that could easily give us a banger episode and instead make such a cringe and uncomfortable episode? You know what? Get me started at the beginning. In this episode, SpongeBob has caused several accidents in the Krusty Krab this week due to being distracted. When having a talk about it with Mr. Krabs, he reveals that he wants to give up his modern life in favor of a more natural life in the wild among the jellyfish. So after Mr. Krabs laughs at his idea, SpongeBob quits his job and decides to give up all of his possessions to start a new life in jellyfish fields.
Oh, I can too last more than one day. I'll show him. Barnacles.
Already, this plot is so out of character for SpongeBob. Yes, I know what some people are gonna tell me. It's regularly shown in some episodes that he has a strong connection to nature, especially in early episodes. For example, in the episode Jellyfish Jam, he decides to take one of them home. Much later in the series, in SpongeBob Last Stand, he protests against the construction of a highway that would destroy jellyfish fields. But here, this connection to nature is completely flanderized, even though this is an aspect of SpongeBob's personality that isn't explored that often. For example, SpongeBob is also a fan of several man-made things. He likes the superhero TV show Mermaid Man and Bond Cowboy and regularly gets merch from it. He also enjoys going to a fast food restaurant like the Goofy Goobers. He's also striving to get his license so he can drive a boat unsupervised. So giving up all of this is already out of character for him. But the other problem is that he quits his job. This is also out of character, considering that in another episode of the same season, he breaks down in tears when Mr. Krabs fires him. So SpongeBob gives up all of his stuff to his friends before taking off his pants. Yes, he's buck naked during most of the episode and going into jellyfish fields. Yet me gets this straight. He gives up on his friends just for nature. And even if the scene where he gives his stuff up, he's uncharacteristically condescending towards his friends for no reason. What is wrong with you, SpongeBob?
Oh, Sandy. That's exactly the response I would expect from someone who lives the sham of a life I once lived. I'm gonna prove that I don't need all this stuff to be happy. Maybe someday you'll wise up and join me. Goodbye.
Then he starts his jellyfish life. He keeps pretending to be a jellyfish. And my other problem with this episode is that in that whole bit, he just sounds mentally insane. I can see that this episode is trying to make fun of people who want to live a more natural life and how out of proportion some of them can act, but the problem is that the episode seems of it is portraying this as a mental illness, which makes it sound unnecessarily condescending, especially for season 1 SpongeBob.
Hey, everybody. Buzz, buzz. Buzz to you. Buzz, buzz. Nice current today. Hey, what's the buzz?
And it just gets worse and worse. But before this, here's the only parts that made me laugh.
I miss you! Sandy misses you! Even Squidward misses you!
After we see Patrick failing to bring SpongeBob back, SpongeBob goes back to his jellyfish life. But then Patrick comes on again, and now he sounds like a freaking serial killer that you'd find in horror movies. He tries to hunt down SpongeBob like a jellyfish, to kill him and turn him into a trophy.
If I can't have you as a friend, I'm gonna make you a trophy! You're gonna look good on my mantle! Friends forever, SpongeBob!
If I recall correctly, this is the first instance of the infamous jerk Patrick Moe's trope in the whole series. And oh boy, what a fucking way to start this horrible trope. Like, we're not just talking about Patrick trying to be possessive or not wanting to share a toy or even being uncharacteristically dumb even for his standards. He wants to hunt SpongeBob down to turn him into a trophy. In other words, he wants to murder him. Oh boy, I sure do love it when the guy supposed to be the main character's best friend acts like a psychopath and tries to murder his quote-unquote BFF for no reason. How are so many people criticizing modern SpongeBob by saying Patrick's a prick, but they don't say anything about nature plants? Because no, Patrick's not just being sad. He's a fucking psychopath here.
Or incredibly stupid, you decide.
This is easily the worst portrayal of his character in the whole first season, with his rampage in Valentine's Day being a close second. And then we just get more unpleasant SpongeBob torture when he's attacked by everything in jellyfish fields. Finally, after being attacked by poisoned sea urchins, SpongeBob finally decides to go back home. And I'll admit, the ending of this episode is pretty wholesome. SpongeBob is depressed by what happened to him today, but all of his friends throw a welcome home party to cheer him up, with the episode itself ending with a group hug.
Though, given what Patrick tried to do in this episode, if I was in SpongeBob's shoes, I wouldn't let Patrick join the group hug.
So yeah, this ending is wholesome, with a funny joke to cap off the episode.
Could we please stop this?
Patrick Itchy!
But the episode itself was a real chore to rewatch, and by the part where Patrick goes on a rampage, I desperately wanted this to end. It's just not pleasant to watch SpongeBob being excited about living among jellyfish, only to see him getting painfully attacked by wild animals. Patrick is not just a prick here, but a fucking psychopath for half the episode.
I can't believe you used the word psychopath 3 times in a freaking SpongeBob video.
SpongeBob's decision of just leaving to start a new life in the wild is also completely out of character. Here's how to make this idea work. First, instead of SpongeBob, Squidward should be the one trying to live in the wild. He's also much more sensitive than SpongeBob when it comes to insults. Maybe he could meet a guy who's a champion in a show about surviving in the wild, and then Mr. Krabs mocks him by saying something like,
Oh, Squidward, you definitely wouldn't last one day in the wild, would ya?
Squidward gives in to this and decides to compete in the show to prove that he can last one day in the wild. Not only would this fit Squidward better, but the camping episode started its conflict like this, and it was hilarious.
Okay, have fun inside.
What do you mean, have fun inside?
Just have fun inside. See you tomorrow.
Oh, bye. You little sneak! I see what you're doing!
What?
Don't think I can't see what you're doing!
What?
You're saying I can't take it!
But all
You're saying I'm soft! You think your little have fun inside challenge is gonna make me come camping with you! But that is never gonna happen!
Okay. Have fun inside.
That's it, I'm in!
And this would have made for a really funny survival show plot. But no, instead, we got an episode that just felt condescending, awkward, immature, and cruel. I really don't understand why so many people like this episode. And the most overhated episode of the show is I Was a Teenage Gary. Yep, both number one slots are occupied by episodes from the first season. This can be surprising at first, because the first season of SpongeBob SquarePants is a fan favorite for many people. But among its 41 episodes, one of them is almost as infamous as some episodes from seasons 6 to 8. It's I Was a Teenage Gary. Despite not being an episode that is themed around Halloween, this was made as an episode that would fit this holiday, as it's paired with Scaredy Pants, the actual Halloween episode of season 1, and its tone is darker and spookier than most of the other episodes in the show. Personally, I think I Was a Teenage Gary is one of the best episodes in the first season, but it's easy to see why many people would disagree with that. Obviously, it's not an episode for everyone, especially since at first it looks like it's gonna be a pretty chill episode, in spite of the horror movie music that plays in the title card. In this episode, SpongeBob and Patrick are gonna go to a jellyfish convention in another town for 3 days. The problem is that SpongeBob totally forgot to find someone who would take care of his snail Gary. Then, Squidward comes to SpongeBob's house, so the latter asks Squidward to take care of Gary. Squidward is reluctant until he learns that SpongeBob and Patrick plan to go away for 3 days. But he doesn't listen to SpongeBob's advice at all, and he's just thinking about what he'd do on those 3 days.
I have the memory of an elephant. I'll take good care of Fred.
Gary!
Right, yes, ma'am.
He completely forgets to feed Gary while SpongeBob and Patrick are away, so 3 days later, when they come back, Squidward sees SpongeBob's snail starving and starts panicking. He tries to feed Gary, who doesn't seem to respond at all. SpongeBob ends up finding out that Gary is sick, so he calls the doctor, not knowing that Squidward is to blame for this. They learn that this must be treated with a shot of snail plasma, except SpongeBob and the doctor are both too squeamish to inject it, so Squidward has to do it. But he mistakenly injects SpongeBob instead, as Gary drinks some water and feels better, indicating that he was just thirsty. SpongeBob starts to feel weird. Squidward assures him that nothing is gonna happen. And then, the interesting part of the episode starts. SpongeBob first starts eating and enjoying snail food. He then starts meowing, and when he goes to the bathroom, he gets slower and slower. He continues to convince himself that he's fine, but then this happens.
I'm okay. Squidward said I'm fine. Ah! Gary, I'm fine. That's okay. I'm a lefty anyway. Now I don't have to buy those new shoes. I take it back, Gary. Something is wrong with me. Ow.
Yep, SpongeBob slowly and painfully transforms into a snail. This is the most talked about scene in the episode, and the most infamous one as well. In fact, its disturbing nature is why many people don't like this episode. This whole transformation is especially scary due to how gradual yet sudden it looks. It also feels tense, as even though the transformation is slow, everything happens so fast that you barely have time to process each change. The creaky sound that SpongeBob's body makes while changing don't help either. And the nightmare doesn't end. Squidward hears knocking on his door. He opens it, and then this happens.
SpongeBob, I already told you. You're gonna be just fine. Ah, ah, ah,
Meow.
SpongeBob breaks into Squidward's house, even though Squidward blocked all the entrances. Then, SpongeBob starts chasing his neighbor and manages to break through every door and to go everywhere with ease, which makes this part of the episode even scarier because SpongeBob sounds like a total animal at this point, and this chase scene also feels like there is no way out for Squidward, as no matter where he tries to go, SpongeBob will just be able to crawl to this place too. In the end, Squidward ends up being injected with the plasma.
Why does he still have the syringe though?
It cuts to an outdoors wall near Squidward's house during the night, where Gary, along with the transformed SpongeBob and Squidward, all meow at the moon. The episode ends with this joke.
You clam up!
meow, meow.
So yeah, this episode is really disturbing, and most people hate it for this reason. But personally, I really love the darker direction it went for. Two things you should know about me is that first, I love it whenever a movie, a cartoon or video game uses the concept of character being able to shapeshift. It's breaking laws of physics by transforming into something completely new, so a character being able to shapeshift against his will or willingly is enough to write all sort of plots, and these plots can go in completely different directions just with this trope, as this can give them any sort of abilities or challenges to overcome. Then, I'm a huge amateur of horror, especially when a piece of fiction goes out of his way to include several types of horror instead of restraining to one of them. And I was as teenage Gary doesn't skip away with OW! Rookie, what did you do?
I was just trying to get my phone back and I mistakenly made the syringe for Sprigatito's fault.
Well, be careful, it just found my back and dang, it really hurts. Anyway, back to the video. There is ambient horror with how gradual and long the transformation actually is, which gives time to the episode to develop a tense atmosphere. There is body horror, with SpongeBob turning into a snail very slowly. There's also a more nervous atmosphere in the final chase, as everything happens very quickly in this scene, and there's never a calm or dull moment, nor a safe place for Squidward. And yeah, when you watch this episode for the first time, it can come across as a big surprise. SpongeBob SquarePants is usually a comedy show with a feel-good atmosphere that is meant to feel like an 11-minute vacation for the viewer. It keeps its tone humorous and wholesome. In contrast, an episode like this, with way less jokes than usual in a very dark and scary atmosphere, can easily take you by surprise. In I Was a Teenage Gary, the jokes are used much more sparingly and rarely, which allows to the creepy atmosphere of the episode to set in easily. And even if all of this makes for a very disturbing episode, I'm okay with the show like SpongeBob having some scary episodes too sometimes if it's done well. Not only that, but since this is a very dark episode, and a scary one as well, it only makes it more memorable and unique. So yeah, I Was a Teenage Gary deserves way more credits than it gets, and in my opinion, it deserves to be seen as one of Season 1's classic, just like Ripped Pants, Pizza Delivery, Walking Small, Opposite Day. Grookey. What is that?
I don't know, but I can see that you're growing a tail.
A tail? What the actual heck, and why do my feet feel so stubby? Ah! And I don't remember standing on two legs being so difficult. Ah! What's going on? Ah!
Okay, cut. No.
Moments later.
Okay, so we're experiencing technical difficulties now, and how to say that? Rayburn kind of can't record it now, so I'm gonna do the outro for him. I think it's neat that people have different opinions, and SpongeBob is great, and you should all watch it. That's it, I think. Also, I think that it's interesting when you like an episode that other people dislike, because the arguments are surprising, I don't know. Don't forget to click this share, like, subscribe button and thingy if you think this content is better than Mr. Small's yoga videos. And thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.